Making sure I'm live here. Maybe a full screen for now. Check, check, check. I think I finally got it. Maybe wait for some people to jump in here. I finally got my live stream set up. Kind of figured out. I'm watching my own live stream. It looks pretty good. I'm running into some issues. Not with my camera. That actually looks great now. Slowly figuring that out. I had a problem trying to figure out how to keep the camera from shutting down. Hello, welcome. Ooh, is there a translate on this? Sorry, I don't speak Spanish very well. Had an issue with my camera shutting off after 30 minutes. We'll see if that happens. I think I figured it out, so shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, I got it looking pretty good there. Now the issue I'm running into is that my computer, which I need to replace soon, is not powerful enough for me to stream and also run my session in my DAW with all the plugins I have for this song. So I've figured out a workaround. I'll bring it up in a minute. I've basically just disabled all of the plugins in the DAW for now, and I'll turn them on and off as I need to kind of talk about certain instruments as I'm going through it. So on screen here, let me pull it up. So we have, I brought the main actual master track in on the top so we can listen to all the parts together, but I've disabled all the individual plugins on the tracks themselves for now, just so I can actually manage the the CPU power involved in doing this. This track has the song has a lot of tracks in it, actually. Maybe more than you would even think just listening to the song. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to kind of break this down, because it has so many different parts to it that maybe kind of get lost, I think, in the whole mix. But when they're listened to individually, they're kind of cool, and you can, I think a lot of them maybe are more felt than they are actually heard, as far as like background parts and orchestral things. I kind of decided to basically fully orchestrate this song, which is something I haven't really done before, at least to this extent. So we'll kind of delve into some of that once I get into it. Maybe once a few more people jump into here. A couple things. I am planning on live streaming every week. I think eventually the idea is that every other week will be a live stream just for members. And then I'll have live streams for everybody, the public, every other week. And I'm going to figure out exactly what I'm going to do on these live streams. I'll probably end up using most of these live streams to actually just like write music live, or practice. I think that's probably the most interesting thing I could do on a live stream, is actually just write music. You know, I have plenty of finished music I'm working on now, but there's also other music that I've just started writing, and I think it would be fun to, you know, kind of, can I chat on here? It'd be fun to finish off some music on a live stream. It kind of forced me to finish certain songs, I'm sure. Anyway, yeah. So if you're interested in that, consider maybe signing up for some channel memberships, because every other of the live streams will be member only eventually, and then I'll have some other perks too as I kind of have more time. I think it's important for me. I'm trying to build a little bit more of a personal community. I haven't really been good about live streaming and stuff like that. My life is pretty crazy busy, but I thought it'd be fun to kind of do this some more and maybe get to know some of you a little bit more. I don't know. Let me see if I can enable subtitles. This is all stuff that I'm trying to figure out. Hello. How's everyone doing? I'm just kind of waiting for maybe a few more people to jump in here, and then I'll get going into the song. Let's see. Can I manage it from my phone too? I can. Okay, cool. I was telling people in here I'm having issues with my computer not being powerful enough to run stream and also run all the plugins. I'm gonna have to upgrade my computer in the next couple months, which I don't know. My current computer is almost 6 years old, so I suppose that's the life of of electronics these days. Hold on, I'm just making a post here. Oops, I got to spell. Yeah, whenever you get a chance, you can hit me up. For now, you can, listen to, can I pin this to the top? Pin message, okay. Yeah, I do give private lessons if anyone's interested. I make comments about that on my videos every once in a while, but, I also like to provide lots of, free stuff if possible. I think too many people hide maybe too much stuff behind paywalls and stuff like that, which, it makes sense, right? You gotta, I'm a musician, gotta make a living somehow, but also at the same time, I want to help people. It's kind of my main goal on this channel. So, but if you want like really, personalized help and stuff, I do give private lessons. I have quite a few students that have come to me through the channel. So, all right, cool. Let me know if everything's looking and sounding good. I kind of did a couple of tests beforehand, so it should be all fine. Once I start live streaming more, hopefully any of the kinks will get ironed out. Oh yeah, I was gonna see if I can get subtitles on here. That's not something I've ever even thought about before. I'll see if I can figure it out. So anyway, might as well start looking at the tune here. If anyone's hasn't had a chance to check out my new single, On the Brink of Madness, I put it out last Friday. There's a playthrough video on the channel. It's also on all your streaming services and Bandcamp, all that good stuff. I think I have links to all of that below in this video, and you can obviously go in the channel and check out the full playthrough video. I kind of just, as I'm working on my next full-length album, I realized it's been a long time since I've put out any music, and I figured it was time to make a single, and I started writing this, and I was enjoying it, so I was like, I'll just finish it. Might as well finish it and put it out and release it while I kind of work on my next full-length album. So it's kind of a fun, I think my original plan was kind of a fun thrashy sort of song, thrash metal influence and some fast riffs and stuff like that. This isn't probably the most progressive song I've ever written. There's some cool stuff here and there, and we'll go over that, but much more about just like the energy and the riffs. I wanted to put out a song that was like super high energy and kind of balls to the wall the whole time. So yeah, and it was a good chance for me, as I mentioned earlier, to work on some orchestral stuff too, kind of fully orchestrating a piece. Anyway, you can see here there's like a million tracks. I think something like 80 different instrument tracks with all the effects and buses and everything. It's well over 100 tracks on here, which is, maybe it's not that big of a session for this kind of thing, but for me it's fairly large. I don't want to just necessarily throw a bunch of random tracks on there for no reason. Like I wanted everything to have a purpose, but I really needed a lot of different tracks. And I'll try to explain which virtual instruments I used as I go through this, if I can remember. A lot of these I have labeled. Yeah, go check out the single if you get a chance. Let me play. I have just the actual mastered track up here on top. As I was mentioning to some people, my computers can't run all of the plugins from this mix session and also stream at the same time, which is super frustrating. So I'm gonna have to just like turn on plugins on and off as I look at individual instruments. But I did bring in the full mastered track on top so we can hear everything, in context, if we want. So let me play just a little bit of the beginning. All right, there we go. So that's the first, up to like the first chorus. Thank you. I think it turned out pretty well. Actually, I'm bummed that I can't like really dive deep into the mix too much, because I think I actually mixed this fairly well for me. But I can at least look at individual instruments. So let's talk about the sort of session here. Hello, Robert. The single will be at Q-Buzz. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe? I don't know. I went through DistroKid for this single, so I chose all the different options as far as like streaming this, so we'll see. Let's maybe look at the session just in general. And I think one thing about this maybe is organization when it comes to a big session like this. One thing I did was I printed everything to audio so that I wasn't treating this like virtual instruments. Okay. It's a streaming thing. They pay more for the music. Okay, good. I don't know about that. I'll have to check it out. That sounds cool. Yeah, I can focus more on the kind of arrangement and all of that too. I think that's what I'm gonna do. The mixing is, I think that's interesting, but that's once I have a more high-powered computer, I should be able to do all that kind of stuff. Yeah, something about the streaming just, it's my computer's like, no, I can't, can't do it right now. Let's take a look at all the different tracks. As I said, organization is kind of a big part of setting up something like this. So once I wrote the song and arranged everything and had it how I wanted, then I went into the DAW. I have a whole nother session where I have all the virtual instruments as part of it. Like, so I figured it out. Thank you. I really had there's some cool riffs in this song for sure, especially that one at the end, which I'll talk about later. I went in and figured out all the virtual instruments. What new computer specs are going to be? Well, really, I just need something that's more high-powered. The MacBook I have now is right before they switched to the M chips, so it's on the old Intel. So it's just, when I got it, it was great, but I don't know. It's older now, and it's just can't quite handle what I'm going to do. I'm probably going to get one of those Mac Minis. Those are super powerful for the price. I'll get one that's a little decked out so I can do all this kind of thing. So back to what I was talking about. Once I arranged everything, how I wanted. I went in and figured out all the different virtual instruments I wanted, and I programmed them the way that I wanted. And then once I got to that point, and after, well, I guess I recorded the guitars and bass next after that. But once everything was done, then it was like, okay, I'm going to print all of these tracks, including all the orchestral stuff, all the virtual instruments, to audio, so that when I'm in the mix session, which is what you're seeing now, I'm not tempted to go back and tweak. M4 with, yeah, M4. That's probably what I'm going to go for. Those are super powerful. I'm doing a lot of 4K video now with my new camera, which you're looking at right now. So when I'm editing videos, it's even worse than when I'm doing... The audio is actually okay if I'm not also streaming. But when I'm editing 4K video, my computer's like, I can't. And it's super frustrating. So the big lesson I put out today, you know, it took probably way longer than it should have for me to edit it because the computer was just running through everything really slowly. I suppose I don't technically have to do 4K, but I think it looks good. So I like it, and I want to do it. I might as well use my nice camera I have. Anyway, so I print everything to audio so that way sorry, I'm trying to read these chats also while I'm talking. I should just focus on what I'm talking about. And I want to treat the mix like I'm mixing all live instruments, right? So I don't want to go back and like tweak drum fills or tweak the velocities of this or that. That part I wanted to do ahead of time. And so when I get into this mixing stage, then everything's kind of set. So I have it set up like, in this case, I'm using virtual drums. I'm using Get Good Drums Modern Massive 2, which I really like. I picked that up when it came out. But I'm treating it like a real drummer, so I'm exporting all the stuff to, you know, in WAV files and then going from there. So we got drums, and I've color-coded all this too, and this is another important thing as far as like doing a big session like this is I want to keep everything super organized. So I've color-coded everything. Drums are yellow, and we have bass, which I played. Guitars, and why is this guitar yellow? That's weird. It should also be green. Boom. So we have rhythm guitars, lead guitars, and then random extra filler guitars. There's some overdrive leads, clean guitars. Then we have all the keyboards, synths, pads, pianos. And these are like orchestral keyboard instruments. So like soft harpsichords, celestes, glockenspiels, music boxes, all that kind of stuff. Orchestral synth, which is something I kind of use to double. And then we're into the winds. So kind of winds, melody, flutes, clarinets. There's spizzicato winds, which are cool. I'll kind of delve into some of those later. Then we have horns. So a lot of the horns in this song are kind of low. Then we have all the strings, various string pads. Violin 1, 2. I have a couple of like interesting aggressive sounding strings. Viola, and then there's some more lower strings down here, some tremolo strings, a cello, and then we have some orchestral percussion too in a few spots. So, and then at the end I have some effects like boomers and risers, which are cool too, just to add some things here and there. So I basically go like rock band, you know, drums, bass, guitars, keyboards, then all the orchestral stuff, and I did that kind of how you would lay out a normal orchestra. So you'd have winds, horns, strings, and then percussion on the bottom. It's a lot to keep track of, but I think, you know, having it organized like this is going to keep everything really nice and tight. So let's take a look at the beginning of the song. The structure of this song really is kind of like a pop song structure. Obviously, it kind of turned into more of a proggy thing, but it really does have like a kind of verse, chorus, bridge, chorus thing at its core. The chorus kind of morphs every single time, which is interesting. That's something I like to do, where the chorus kind of is expanded upon each time it happens. And then the verses are, you know, not traditional verses. They're very like more riff based. And the bridge is longer. It has a solo and then a longer couple different sections to it. And there's a big ending section, but at its core, there is kind of a little bit of a pop song sort of structure in there. It just keeps everything, I think, really consistent for a shorter song like this and gives it a little bit of understandable structure. I don't want to be writing just like riff salad, you know. Ah, the Baroque version. Actually, I thought about, because once we listen to some of the orchestral stuff, like it almost is sounds complete with the orchestra without even any of the rock band instruments. I consider doing like an orchestral version of the song. That might actually be cool. Maybe I should. Just to see how, you know, you might arrange a song like this for just an orchestra. So let's look at the very beginning. I'm going to have to turn on these plugins as I go. So let's see. Overdrive, lead guitar. This is the guitar that's playing the sort of main intro lead part. Right. I actually posted a lesson on my Instagram about this particular intro already today. I can play part of it. And I talked about this in my big lesson I put out today as well. So it's a blues scale bass, basically. So I'm kind of leaning into that, you know, flat 5 from a blues scale. All of that up to that point is like right from a E minor blues scale. And then you have basically take that same shape up 3 frets. There's some diminished 7th sort of arpeggios in there too. This is a cool lick, and it was one of the first things I wrote for the song. Kind of sparked the whole direction of the rest of the song. So I have this main overdrive lead guitar, so it's not super distorted. Harmony. So there's a couple of different types of harmony happening in this song. There's like this intro section, for example, or a lot of the riffs where it's there isn't really a chord progression necessarily, right? It's more just riffs within a scale or whatever, you know, kind of metal stuff. And so for orchestration for that, a lot of it ends up being doubling, which I'll kind of go into that a little bit. And then in the choruses, I actually have like chord progressions, right? More actual harmonic movement and things like that. So then it's about having the orchestra support the chords that are happening underneath and then also support the melody. So there's doubling of the melodies. There's a counter melody in the chorus. There's orchestral stuff that's really going along with the chords. So I'll make sure that I talk about that as I get into it. But yeah, there's a number of different ways that I'm using these sorts of things. Yeah, the diminished is interesting, right? I'm really leaning into that tritone right move. Right, that kind of stuff. That's a fun part, super fun part to play. As I said, I posted a lesson on my Instagram just today about that if you want to learn it from a guitar perspective. There's a lot of like ring finger to pinky stuff in there, which on the guitar is hard to do. Okay, so what am I doubling this intro part with? There's quite a few things actually. So we have an electric piano. That's one of I can't remember exactly what I used here. It's a native instruments something for that. It might have been the hybrid keys. There's a couple of settings on that I really like. And then I have a harpsichord. Once again, I'm bringing this orchestral kind of classical influence. Surprisingly enough, I'm like using a blues scale, which is sort of a weird mashup. But anytime I do something classical like this, I love to double the fast parts with harpsichord because harpsichord has so much attack to it, right? And so there's certain instruments I'm doubling with here that don't have as much of that transient attack to it. And so I like to have an instrument that does, because it blends super well with the guitar, right? If I even just do like harpsichord and guitar together, you can hear. It almost like blends into the guitar and just makes it sound like I'm, picking this the notes even harder than I actually am. So we have that, and then the electric piano. And then I also have this glockenspiel and a music box. So these are all completely doubled. Obviously, mix-wise, I made sure to have the guitar kind of as the focal point. And then some of these other ones are like panned different directions just to kind of fill up the space. Let me turn on some of the processing for... Well, I guess I don't have too much processing on these. The music box, I think, is from Spitfire Audio. That's very much in the background. The glockenspiel, I don't remember where that one's from. Here's with the harpsichord and there's the piano. So this is everything but the guitar. Right. It's cool. And then when the second half of this riff kicks in and the full band kicks in, I add a few more instruments so this can kind of stick out a little bit more. So then I also have a clean guitar that's doing... I mean, not completely clean. And it's really just kind of enhancing the main guitar. Hello, Brentus. Right. These instruments all continue these other ones, and then I bring in, I believe, these two different aggressive patches. Didn't Beethoven use some blues ideas? I mean, maybe, although Beethoven was alive before the blues was actually the blues. There's a lot of modern classical music that does, I think especially some of that Turner stuff back in the early 20th century. The same time that a lot of the blues was happening, I think a lot of those composers started to bring in those influences. Someone like, a Copland, that kind of stuff, which I really like. And then, of course, moving into some of the later modern composers. Now, I mean, classical music now is, modern composers and stuff is, they're using any influence at all. I mean, all your video game music, which is orchestral, is like half of those people are like, they're basically like me. They're, prog metal musicians. Because I know some of them. So I have these staccato strings and aggressive strings. I love both of these. I can't talk. The staccato strings is from Impact Soundworks. This is a sound I use all the time. Really aggressive. I love to double things with it. So on its own. Right. And then I have this aggressive strings, which is from, this is another one from Spitfire. Together. Right, and those don't have as much attack, right? Like I was talking about the harpsichord having a lot of attack. And some of these other ones having a lot of attack. So if we put everything together, we got the main overdrive guitar, all these different pianos, and the strings. And it's all completely doubled, right? There's no harmonies there. There are some different octaves, I guess, depending on the instrument. Some of those strings and keyboards are up higher. But, I'm doubling a lot of things there, too. And there's going to be a ton of doubling through all of this, right? We're dealing with a really fast, dense song. There's a lot of notes happening. And if you have too many different parts competing against each other, then it's really hard to pick out each individual parts. There are a few sections of this song where it gets really dense, where there's like multiple parts happening. But overall, I was trying to make sure that you can hear all of the different parts. There ends up being a lot of doubling happening. Make sure to drink water. Everyone out there, drink water too. It's important. All right, let's take a look at the rhythm section instruments here. This is where my computer might start to hate me, but let me see if I can see if my computer can handle all of the drums processing. Yeah, not really. It's trying. That works anyway. I mean, the drums are probably what I process the most, right? They have the most different plugins. So, not surprised is not enjoying. Maybe I'll turn off some of these other ones. Don't waste time with what? Well, I also have. Trust me, I drink plenty. I need it to survive. I've already had. Well, maybe I've only had one coffee so far today. I'm gonna make another one after this live stream. More coffee. I got working. I'm trying to finish. I don't quite have the tabs for this song. Well, actually, I just finished the tabs for this song, so I'm gonna post them right after I make live streaming, so you can, check this if you'd like. But yeah, I mean, let's see. Let me turn off a couple things here. Same, but yeah. Nope, can't. Let's talk more about stuff. We have the rhythm instruments that kind of come in. See if I can get the bass. In here. Since I did actually play the bass, it might be interesting to talk about a little bit. Doesn't even want to do that. So I actually I'm using a pick on all the fast parts, but I'm all these 16th notes and stuff. So the bass was quite tricky to perform. I basically have a DI track is what I recorded. All right, so there's the DI track, and then I have like this track here, which is called bass DI, which is basically just the low end of the bass. Computer's begging for mercy, yeah, because I have 100, like well over 100 tracks here. It's super annoying. Once I do upgrade my computer, I want to like dive more into some of these like sessions and stuff because I think it's interesting. You can hear how all the parts work together, but the computer's just it's not going to have it today, which is fine. That's how it goes. Then I have this sort of main bass heavy track. Maybe I can solo that out. See how that sounds. So I compress it heavily so that it evens out all the transients. And then I have Neural DSP Parallax, which is providing most of the tone. And then an EQ. I actually have the bass side chained to the kick, so that anytime the kick's hitting, the low end of the bass gets ducked a little bit. Pretty classic trick. Mostly keeps the low end kind of in check. So I'll just do kick and bass. You can kind of hear how that works. Played for the most part. It's not something I do, the side chaining, like the kick to the bass, but in this case, because there's so much fast double kick, I thought it made sense to side chain to the side chain to the bass and the kick together. So yeah, the audio is going to jump in and out here and there. So that's the bass sound. Let's talk about the main rhythm guitar tone. This is using Neural DSP Gojira, which has kind of been my favorite of the Neural DSP plugins for rhythm guitars lately. So this is the tone with no processing. Right, so it's I mean, pretty good as is. It's almost basically there. But I did add just a couple things here. EQ. It's just giving it a little bit more energy, getting rid of some of the extreme lows and highs. And then, thanks, Curtis. I think the rhythm guitar sound ended up being awesome. I actually kind of wish I cranked it more in the mix. I was dealing with all the other instruments, but I've been using Pro Q4 by FabFilter, and it's so incredibly powerful. It's crazy. So obviously I'm doing a number of EQ moves, but I also have like this one here, which is the spectral, which basically tames harshness. So I'm just like taming harshness in the top end. I'm also adding a little bit of saturation within this plugin. I mean, you can basically do everything just with Pro Q4. And I've kind of simplified my mixing role, because I think sometimes less is more, right, when it comes to this kind of thing. I used to have chains. There's only 3 plugins on the rhythm guitars here. I remember some of my old mixes I would have, 12, 15 plugins on just the rhythm guitars, and it was like definitely overkill. So I'm really just more focused on like getting a good source tone and then trying to enhance that, right? And there's that harmony happening in here too. What the heck did I just do? I feel like I messed with something there. That's fine. There's a harmony here in the second half of this verse, which I think once again kind of gets buried in the mix underneath all the orchestral stuff, but right here. I think that's cool. It's really like, once again, kind of pentatonic scale based in the harmony. So the main part is that blues scale, right? And then the harmony, I believe, is that's the main part in the harmony. Right. And then it kind of has like diminished harmony too. And the same thing up a minor third. That's kind of the harmony there. And then I love this lick right before the chorus, or is it? Which is really hard to play. So that's basically a G major 7 arpeggio, G major 7, then B flat major 7. So the main part, triple. It's like economy picked. And there's a harmony of that too. Ah. I haven't played this in a long time. I recorded this like 5 months ago. So together. And then it goes into the chorus part. Now there is some orchestral stuff that kind of happens. And let's listen to just the main mix and you kind of hear. And the second half of the verse. So there's a few things with that. One is that I'm actually doubling some of these runs with a synth. This is very much in the background, but if you listen, you can hear it in there. It's kind of just more felt than heard. So I have that underneath, and then there's two different orchestral kind of layers happening over the second half of that riff. One is these long like horn melodic lines, and this is actually, this melodic line at the horns play is actually the same one that happens in the second verse, but just like much slower. These sort of half steps. So right. So it's like that. So in the second verse, I ring those notes out. You can hear them. Right? There's that part that happens in the second verse. Ah! That's super hard to play. But in this first verse, I hint at that melody with these low strings you can hear. In there, and I have, let's see, French horn, two different low horns. The main one is this 8Dio, which is a company I really like. I have some of their orchestral stuff. This is like I think it's Majestica Orchestra is what it's called. So it has like 200 instruments, and it's supposed to emulate like an absolutely massive orchestra. So really aggressive, and I did some stuff with the sort of expression part of it, so like some of the notes, you know, ramp up as they're held, and then combined with the other one, which is Albion, which is that's another Spitfire audio orchestral plugin. So you get the horns, French horns, an octave up, and the trumpet. Once again, more doubling or octaves in this case. And then I have a cello and also low strings that also play this part. That's awesome. It just sounds cool. Thanks, Watts. I love like low horns. I think they just sound like so epic. So the other orchestral part that's happening alongside the low horns and low strings are these like sort of flourishes. I don't even know what you'd call them. Like these little stabs, basically, that are happening in these spizzicato strings as well as like spizzicato winds. I'm hungry, obviously. And you'll hear how these work. Basically, like it's super fast scale runs or arpeggio runs into the hits. So so let's see if I can do those with the guitars, if that'll work. You can hear how this part kind of accents the parts of the riff. I have even more instruments doing it. I didn't realize that. Once again, more doubling. I have the like orchestral keyboard tracks also playing that part. That's fun. I had those keyboard instruments play the like run that happens at the end of the verse too. And then let's see if I can do the sort of other orchestral part, and you'll hear both of these. Right. So that's kind of how those orchestral parts work underneath. So let's listen to just the main fully mixed track, and you'll kind of hear all those parts together. So, right, it's a lot of stuff. There's 20 tracks in the background, and they don't really come out, as clearly, right, when you're listening to the entire mix. But they're kind of just helping to amp up the other parts of the song. I kind of had to make a decision when I was mixing, like, how heavy orchestra am I going to go, right? Because I could have gone, like, heavier on the orchestra, lighter on the band, which might have been cool in some ways, but you would have lost some of the power from the band, right? From the drums and bass and guitars. So I opted to maybe go a little more band heavy, but in parts I really wanted to amp up some of that orchestral stuff. I wonder if I can just solo the entire orchestral bus for parts of this. In fact, actually, if we want to talk about the orchestra, we should probably look at the bridge, and this would give me a chance to talk about the chord progression from the chorus too. So most of the verses are kind of that blues scale, weird based kind of thing, which I talked about in my lesson that I put out today if you want a little more detail on that. Oh, you've been learning it? Awesome. Yeah, if you cover if anyone ever covers anything that I do, I'd love to see videos. Just so you know, I will have tabs available for this, hopefully in the next couple hours. I just finished them. So I'll be putting those out. I don't know. I can't remember. I'll sell them for $5 or whatever. If you want, official tabs. Obviously, if you're learning it by ear, that's cool too. It's probably a better use of your time, but it can save you. Yeah, and actually, Robert, I purposely did lean heavier into the orchestra, like in the bridge, which I'm going to go over in just a second. And I also, as I said, I'm thinking about it still. I might just make like an orchestral version of this because I think that'd be cool. Yeah, actually, learning it by ear, that's probably, as someone who's learned a lot of things by ear, that's definitely going to be a better use of your time in the long run. So the chorus chord progression we're at E minor, and the progression is basically A minor, or like A minor 9. And then we have a C minor major 7, which kind of functions like a 5 chord. I think I actually kind of invert it. And then it goes to E minor 9 too. So basically really 4, 6, 1, or 4. This is like a substitute for 5, 5, and then 1. And then I play that kind of leading tone diminished 7th chord that's coming from harmonic minor. Of course, I'm using my 7th string in drop A, so I can get a lot of these low notes. And there's this kind of tag at the end of the chorus, which is basically 1 to 6. Right. So that chord progression, the 4, 6, 1 from the beginning of the chorus, there's a modified version of that happens underneath the solo. The solo has more fusion kind of versions of those chords and inversions and things like that, but that chord progression is kind of at the core underneath the solo as well as the bridge part. And then also, of course, the choruses too. So I kind of recycle that chord progression a couple times. I kind of change it here and there. But it's a nice, cool, rich sounding chord progression. So up to this point, we've kind of just been hanging out literally on E as the root note the entire time. So I wanted to start the chorus with a different chord, right? Not on E. It kind of does resolve to that E minor, but I wanted a different chord as the first chord, so that's why I chose the 4 chord A, which is always a good choice. Of course, some extensions in there too. Now the the chorus, like rhythm guitar part, is actually, at least in the first chorus, the other choruses are more simple, but in the first chorus it's pretty crazy actually. So there's all these big runs. I basically wanted to continue the idea of the intro of the song. So in the intro, in the main riff, we have that. Right, that kind of run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in the chorus, I did the same sort of thing at the beginning. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But using the A minor 9 chord. And then the C minor major 7 chord. How's this part go? That's right. That part's really hard to play. Alright, something like that. That's the beginning. It's been months since I played that. Very cool part though. And then in the second chorus, I kind of simplify and just do chords, right? Like a simpler sort of variation on it though. But I thought those runs in the first chorus of the rhythm guitar kind of connected it to the beginning of the song a little bit better and maybe made it feel less out of place, right? So that's some of the stuff I think about as I'm writing, like, okay, how can I connect some of these ideas to the other parts? So now I've talked about the chorus chord progression. I actually want to jump all the way to the bridge. Let's listen to it, just the kind of full mix. So that first part there was the same chord progression as the chorus, just done in the key of G minor instead of the key of E minor. It kind of modulates up to G minor for the solo and then through this whole bridge part. And obviously this part is also triplet based. I think I was maybe listening to some Lamb of God at the time that I was writing some of this, but you have a kick in my strings. So these kind of runs. Once again, the same kinds of runs that I did earlier in the chorus, as well as, of course, the beginning of the song too. The same sort of 6-note pattern: 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right, that kind of sound. So once again, I'm connecting some of those ideas together here as well by using that sort of pattern. But the bridge part has the most orchestral kind of stuff all layered on top of each other. So let's solo just the orchestral parts here. There we go. I'm glad you're enjoying the tune. Thanks for hanging out. Good luck learning some of these parts. As someone who's had to play them, they're not super fun. In fact, I'm going to do a live recording of the crazy riff at the end here. I'll probably do it on Monday, because I'm going to make a lesson on it. So not terribly looking forward to that. It's a super, super crazy riff, but it is fun. A lot of these riffs kind of actually flow off the fingers pretty nicely. Lots of open strings and stuff. So obviously a lot going on in this bridge section orchestrally, and most of these parts are doubled with the band instruments. So you have like the melody, which I have tremolo strings, and then winds, I think trumpet too, like that part. You also have more of the spizzicato, like stabs, right? The bloop, bloop. Those ones. I guess I could solo those. That was really cool. I really like how that kind of worked out. And then let's put in the melody back in with that. And the melody is also doubled with guitars too. I'm basically tremolo picking in the guitar part. Right, that kind of thing. So that's how those two parts work together. And then I have, once again, like a counter melody in the low strings, which I didn't even talk about. I have a counter melody that's similar to this happening in the choruses too, in the low strings. So you can kind of hear that against. So there's parts where it's syncing up with the main melody. There's other parts where it's moving in the spaces of the sort of main melody there. So there's a lot going on in this part. This is probably the densest part from an orchestral perspective. And when I mixed this part, I went maybe a little heavier on the orchestra because I thought that part sounded really cool with the orchestral stuff. And this is like the most I would layer different parts on, because you have really 4 different things happening at once. You have like the low fast riffage, you have the melody, the main melody, you have the counter melody, and you have these like stabs in between. So it's a lot of different stuff. I don't usually recommend putting that much stuff in one section. Yeah, I might actually need to do an orchestral version because I think that sounds really cool. In fact, I think this particular section, the Rock Band, probably takes away from it. But but I really like how that part turned out. I was like, I gotta write some sort of, triplet section. I don't know why that was what my brain wanted to do. I thought it would be cool to have something more triplet based. And actually, I guess that's a good time to talk about the solo then too, which I maybe have to grab my other guitar for the solo, since there's lots of bar stuff happening in the solo. I kind of wanted to put like a fusion solo into the song. Thought that'd be a fun change of pace for the song, to slow down, like not slow down, but get a little quieter for a second, and then make the chords a little more interesting, and then write a fusion-esque kind of solo. I won't play the whole solo because I don't think I can right now. But the solo has all kinds of fun fusion-esque stuff. Lots of like whammy bar. lots of that kind of stuff. Notes rung together and whammy bar bends and dips and dives. But the groove underneath the solo is really cool. It's also triplet based. Once again, as I mentioned, kind of using a variation on the chord progression. So here's the chords underneath. And then I have some inversions happening by changing some of the bass notes. So here's a pad doing the bottom part. Am I having a certain someone play? Not on this song. This is just a random single, Curtis. But I am currently figuring out the studio time for you know who to record drums for my next full length album. Probably gonna do that in February or March, hopefully. So Curtis and I know each other through a mutual friend of ours who is an absolutely monster drummer. So I'm gonna have him play on my full-length album, because obviously I'd prefer to have live drums as much as possible, but sometimes it doesn't make sense if I'm doing like a single like this and I want to save myself some money. But yes, he has all the music already and he hates me for it, which is fair because it's crazy. But anyway, yeah, so live drums, hopefully. Next music you hear from me, unless I put out another single in the meantime, will be live drums. So this actually is an interesting time. I could talk about like orchestral percussion, because there's not a ton of it in this song, but I did use it in a few places. In this bridge part, solo, and then sort of the quiet chorus later on are the parts I used it in. So timpani. So I have timpani doing the bass notes along with the other instruments. So this is underneath the solo. Right, which I don't even know if you hear that much necessarily. It's like the first half of the solo, but I think it sounds cool, and it kind of amps up the part. So let's hear just the sort of backing instruments for the solo here. Once again, lots of doubled kind of parts. Here we go. And then it moves into the second half of the solo, which I wish I could solo the drums. Wish I could solo the drums more. I guess I could solo them without the processing on. It'll sound weird, but when the drums kick in underneath the solo, they're doing a shuffle groove, basically. Because it's a triplet bass, you can hear that. Absolutely love that. Definitely my favorite groove I wrote in this song. It's like most of this song is kind of like balls to the wall, double kick and metal, but like I love writing grooves like that. I think it's so cool. Have like all the moving hi-hat parts and the ghost notes and all that. Actually, I got a solo also for that groove part. This awesome low riff synth that I put in here. And in fact, in the main mix, this is almost louder than the bass once the drums kick in. This is such a cool sound. I kind of actually crafted this synth from nothing, which I don't do too often, but. And that synth is doubling the bass part. Let's see if I can get the bass in there with it, because they sound really cool together. My computer's really failing me here. Let's see. So you kind of hear how that works. Really cool sound. I love that groove. Turned out really well. And then, of course, the thing is, like, the backing underneath this solo is really cool. I could have, like, made a whole section where I just, like, grooved for a while. But I just buried all these cool fusion ideas with a solo on top. Classic guitar move. Like, here's all this cool stuff in the background, but just listen to me shred instead. So here's the whole solo, like, in context. Actually, since I'm just finished working on the tabs, and I don't really feel like playing the solo right now, I will pull up the tabs for the solo, and you can look at it as you hear it. Maybe you can do it. There we go. Your solo. I'm going to do a live take of this at some point too. But you can see there's so much kind of whammy bar work happening here. Where's the song? Here it is. So there's the solo. I think the solo turned out really cool too. Obviously, part of me thinks that it's burying a bunch of even cooler stuff underneath it, but there are some fun licks in here. I do a couple of 16th note riffs, and as I mentioned, this part is like a triplet feel, right? Kind of that shuffle groove almost. But I do a couple of big like 16th note runs over top of that, which is kind of weird, but it works. Way. That first one is really tricky. This is a pure alternate picking run. That's the run. Just a lot of interesting like left hand positions too, and there's some like single notes on a string alternate picking kind of stuff. This is tricky. I need to practice once more. Almost. I don't know. It's gonna get any better than that today. But very cool run. And then there is like that crazy big tapping run at the end too, which is also super hard to play. There's a lot of tracking sort of involved in that particular lick, which is cool. Someone asked, how do you learn to write drum parts? I I have a few videos on writing drum parts if you're interested. You can like search on my channel for drum lessons. But for me, it was a couple of things. One was just doing it. Right when I first started, I was not very good at writing drum parts. I just wrote like really basic beats or whatever. But as I started to do it more, I started to get a feel for what was working and what didn't work. A couple of things that have been good for me. One is playing with really good drummers. I play live a lot, and I have for a long time. And I've had the opportunity to play with a lot of really good drummers. So that has really helped me figure out what drum parts work and what sound cool and all that kind of stuff. And then the other thing, too, would be just studying on my own, too. I'm not actually a drummer. Like, I can like hold down a basic beat. I know how it works physically. But I've watched a ton of drum lessons by some of my favorite drummers, right? So, like, on Drumeo, for example, there's, like, hundreds of lessons from the best players in the world. You can just watch some of those. Choose a drummer you really like. Watch one of those hour-long lessons and try to pick up on some of the things they do, like what kind of fills are they doing? What kind of cymbals do they use in the grooves? You know, how does their kick drum patterns work? You know, where are they doing ghost notes? Whatever, all that kind of detailed stuff. And then over time, you'll eventually, through trial and error and actually just trying to write drum parts, eventually start to be able to come up with interesting drum parts. There's a lot of stuff in this song that's probably pretty, I think, cliche or straightforward, right? Things like a lot of those double bass fills, like Mike Portnoy style fills that I put into everything, or just like straight double kick stuff, and maybe not the most interesting stuff in the world, but a groove like this solo part I think is really cool and definitely maybe showcases more of my ability to write drum parts, which is something I have spent a lot of time doing, especially since, you know, in the modern solo musician world like I'm in, I have to be able to write decent drum parts because I'm not going to be able to always hire a drummer to play because it's too expensive. And it's just not feasible, you know, if I'm doing demos or whatever, or even a song like this. So I need to be able to write drum parts that sound at least somewhat realistic. So there's other like programming stuff too. And some of the lessons I have on my channel delve into that, about like how you should program the drums to make them more realistic too. Changing, you know, different velocity ideas, you know, all that kind of stuff, makes a difference too. And of course, whatever drum software you have can make a big difference too on how the drums end up sounding. So it's all kind of linked. It just takes some time to figure out. But yeah, Robert, you're right. If you just kind of get the main groove first, is what I usually do. Just kind of get the main feel of the groove, like where are the snare hits, what's the pulse, all of that. Then I can start to fill out the details by adding some extra ghost notes or some extra, you know, tom fills or cymbals or whatever it happens to be. But it is definitely a process. You can't just like jump into writing cool drum parts right away. You'll probably start like most people do, just like basic drum backbeat, and then the kick drum doubles the riff, right? Which is actually, you know, I'm doing that a lot in this song even too. Kick drum doubling the heavy rhythm guitars, and, you know, kind of working as one unit, which, you know, it works great for metal, but sometimes you want to write some more interesting styles of grooves. Yeah, so I've kind of talked about, I think, most of the parts of the song. Is there any questions anyone has who's hanging out, like specific parts of the song, like, hey, what are you doing here? How are you playing this? What's going on? All that kind of stuff. I guess there would be kind of cool thing to look at would be like some of the final breakdown sort of heavy riffs. Once again, I can't really play much because my computer's not going to allow me to, but I can show you some of the background parts, which I think are kind of cool. So here's the like crazy riff at the end. And all of that is actually in 4/4, which, you know, for me, if you know me, that's unusual. But I didn't know. I was just writing the riff. It sounded cool, and I went with it. How much was that cramping in the full playthrough? Well, maybe a little bit because I had to do, you know, multiple takes for each instrument, multiple different camera angles and whatnot for each instrument. But yeah, this last riff, I think it's maybe not. I have to get my 7-string Brick out. It is crazy and difficult, but I kind of designed it in such a way that, like, I've written harder riffs, put it that way. A lot of this stuff lines up on the guitar pretty nicely. There's a lot of open strings. Kind of gives you a chance to move from one part to the next. Let me pull up the tab. I'll kind of play through it along with the tab. I might actually just close my DAW now, my computer. I'm not going to be able to show you too much more from that anyway. We'll save all the real detailed stuff for once I get myself a new computer. I think for most of these live streams, for now, it'll be fine, because if I'm doing live streams and just writing, I can do that. I don't necessarily have to have, you know, a billion plugins in my DAW open, or I might even just write into Guitar Pro. So. Important to tune. Oh, is this the bass part? Yeah. Also, the bass part during this final riff sucks too. Definitely had to do a lot of punching in for the bass part. The guitar part, I did like grab from multiple takes, but I actually recorded this whole crazy riff in one take. I wasn't like punching in individual parts. And I think that's one thing in general with this song. I wish I could have like soloed more of the guitar parts in the final mix, but I kind of went for an approach where I wasn't overly editing everything. I played much larger chunks, and I even left in some stuff which I considered maybe to be like a little sloppy, but I wanted it to be more realistic. I've gotten away from the super overly edited stuff. I'm just not a big fan of the sound of it, and so many people are doing it now on Instagram and stuff that I think it just sounds cooler to like have just a riff that's like played like, hey, I played this part, and like, sure, I did a couple of takes, maybe like, you know, punched in 1 or 2 spots here or there, but what you're hearing is like me actually playing this stuff up to speed. So like, as I mentioned in my lesson today, there's tons of blues scale stuff happening in here, right? In fact, this whole first run, all blues scale, and you notice I'm using open strings, and this is something I'm going to talk about when I do a lesson on this riff. I'm using the open strings as a way for me to get from, you know, 2 different parts of the guitar really quickly, right? It's actually unrealistic. Do I tab as you write or write it out? For this song, I believe that I wrote most of it into Guitar Pro first, so I had the tab right away. Because of my classical background, I'm very comfortable with writing into notation right off the bat. I'm very fast at it too. So in this case, yeah, the tab was kind of there first to begin with. So these are the tabs that will be available here very shortly, hopefully, for purchase if you'd like. Of course, you can just watch this video and steal them from me right now, but I'm using open strings as a way to get from low to high. If you watch crazy Instagram videos and someone's like jumping low to high, and there's like no, you're not hearing any sort of like artifacts between going up like low and high, and there's no open strings, like that's kind of a dead giveaway that they're miming. Well, not even miming necessarily, but like probably not even playing that part all as one. But if you like design a crazy riff like this in such a way where, in this case, I have open strings that are going to help me get from low to high more easily, then you can do a riff like this that that has a big range to it and still make it playable. So, all right, so that open string allows me to get down to the chord, right? So I can actually play that, right, and kind of get from low to high. So there's some other like crazy tapping licks here too. That one's really hard. Right. There is some control involved in like once I play those open strings, like muting them. Right. I should have done a pinch harmonica on that. That would have been cool. Also, like sometimes I need time to get my tapping hand, like my right hand, back to pick. Like that riff. Then there's more open string. And this. It's kind of a crazy riff too. It's like those offbeat 16th notes, which is a really interesting rhythm. So I'll play through this whole riff slowly. And then it repeats again. There's like a harmony the second time too, which is basically just the runs of the riff played up a little higher. And then at the very end of the riff, there's like an extra measure of 16th notes. Right, like that. So those two measures back to back at the end. That's pretty good actually. Right. That's a crazy riff. Very cool. Like, I really like the use of the open strings in there because you get these really big interval jumps in kind of a weird way, right? You have like octave interval jumps that are maybe not as crazy to play as they sound, right? So that whole riff is crazy. You know, I simplified it by having it all be in 4/4 and have like a normal phrase length, so it's like 8 measures of 4/4, right? Because I think the stuff inside of the riff were so complicated that it made sense. What's the actual speed? Hey, that wasn't too bad actually. You can tell I've practiced that at least a little bit. So I'm gonna do a live, as I said, I'm gonna do a live take of this one, like a one take of this riff because I want to teach it, and I don't want to teach something if I can't play it. That's important to me. So in fact, the solo too in this song, I almost did it in one take. So what I did was I played everything up to the crazy tapping lick as one, and recorded that a few times, and then I recorded the big tapping lick in the ending part as its own too, just because I wanted it to be super clean. I am going to do a live take of the solo at some point too, but it was just really hard for me to get into the tapping from the other part for some reason, because there's a lot of tracking that I have to do in the tapping part. Yeah, as far as like vocals, yeah, overprocessed vocals that's bad too, especially in like this kind of music, right? If you expect it in pop music to hear like really overprocessed vocals, it's part of the sound. But when you're listening to like a metal song and all of a sudden there's like this super auto-tuned like singer coming in. For me, it's just like, oh man, because I grew up listening to singers like Russell Allen, right? Or some of those like powerhouse, power metal singers too, where it's like I've seen Symphony X. I saw Symphony X a couple weeks ago, and Russell Allen is like perfect live, and that he's not like tuning his vocal. I mean, there might be a little bit of processing, like tuning here and there, but that he's nailing those parts in the studio, and it sounds like it, right? There's power to it, and it sounds real. It's an interesting thing because I remember when we did A Sense of Gravity, obviously CJ, singer from Sense of Gravity, is an incredible vocalist. We did tune his vocals, right? I mean, that's pretty common stuff. But also at the same time, I remember like when I was tuning some of the vocals that I left in some imperfections because I thought it just sounded more natural, right? For me, it's kind of, with production in general, at least what I've tried to do lately is kind of find that balance. Find the balance between it being super tight and well played, well produced, really powerful and all of that, but also try to leave in some of the humanity in it too. So, I mean, hopefully that came across in this particular song, that like the melodic elements, like I played all of those choruses, the melodies, I played them all. What you're hearing is mostly like one take in those parts. The solos and the riffs I tried to play in long sections, and even left in a few places where it wasn't like, inhumanly perfect. Just because I think it sounds better overall. Well, am I missing a tapped here? Oh no! I'm gonna have to re-export the tab. I thought I double-checked the edit on this. This is the fun kind of stuff you get to do when you're making your own tabs. I'm a stickler for the details for this kind of stuff too. Oh yeah, then we got the breakdown riff. I gotta play this part before I end the live stream. So, at the beginning of the song, there's this line. Right there where I go B flat to B and A to B flat. So what I do here is I've basically turned that part into its own riff at the end of the song. Then I play that part, which happens in the previous fast riff. So. Then I also have this, which is the lick from the beginning of the song too. And then these disgusting tritone power chords. Right. And then I have an even heavier version of that where instead of doing the runs, I just do like tritone, gross tritone power chords on a 7-string guitar, super low. I don't know. This kind of feels like a little bit of a caveman style riff, which I think it's fun to do those kind of riffs every once in a while. Of course, there's like crazy shredding on top of it. But coming from this really notey, over the top riff, I was like, to end this song, I'm just gonna like do some like punchy in the face, like heavy riffs. I doubled all the low parts with like the low horns and strings and stuff too, to kind of beef them up. Just made this super like brutal ending part. I don't know. I just love riffs. It's funny, like a lot of modern, like all those Instagram guitars I feel like you listen to, it's like there's kind of been a move away from heavy riffing in general, in some of that stuff, like in the quote unquote prog world. I don't know though. I just love riffs. I just love like dark, super heavy sounding riffs. So I feel like that's always going to be a part of my music. And I'll do the like weird, selective picking stuff here and there, some thumping things here and there. But I always want to have like riffs. Yeah, caveman style. Well, I mean, caveman riffs are like deathcore riffs, like. Just like low, chuggy stuff. I feel like anytime you do that, like tritone, It's as close as I'll get to playing like metalcore. I don't know. I love riffing. It's just a part of what I do. All right, cool. I gotta end the stream here because I'm gonna try to get these tabs up online here soon. I have a lesson in 30 minutes. So, and yeah, I stayed up late last night editing that video. So if you haven't watched the video I put out today, go check it out. I think it's a really good look into how I kind of built some of these riffs using the blues scale and all that. As I said, I'm going to try to live stream every week until I get some channel members, which I don't have any yet. Until I get some channel members, I'll just like do public live streams for a while. But eventually, every other live stream will be members only live stream. So I think in the next one, I'm going to try to finish some, or at least add on to some music that was working on. I put out a video. Was it last year? I think it might have been last year, or maybe earlier this year, where it was a bunch of songs. Then I said like, hey, which of these songs should I finish? Right, it's a bunch of like short clips, and so people let me know which ones they wanted to see maybe finished. So I might try to take a few of those and try to finish them. The faces are when you're playing the caveman riffs. The faces are super cool. You gotta make gross faces. People won't know if the riffs are gross unless your faces also show them that the riffs are gross. But yeah, no, I mean that's my favorite probably riff of the whole song to play because it doesn't require much of like focus to like try to play cleanly. I'm just banging out low disgusting chords. Anyway, so I'll be live streaming again next week, similar time probably. I do have a gig next week, but I don't think I have to leave till a little bit later. So, yeah. Anyway, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Lots of questions here. It's cool. And I imagine as I do more live streaming, there'll be more people involved. As I said, next time I'll live stream and write some music live on stream. I think that'll be really fun. But yeah, everyone, you all have a good Friday night, unless it's already your bedtime. I know I have watchers from Europe sometimes too. Yeah, I'll see you all next week. If you haven't checked out the song On the Brink of Madness, go check that out on my channel. I'm really pleased with how this one turned out. It's definitely like, it may be a little different than some of the other stuff I've done recently, but I think it's a fun song and kind of really over the top, really aggressive, and sometimes it's fun to do that. So you can share it with your friends if you like. That's always helpful. I've been trying to get it on some Spotify playlists and whatnot too. I'm not even sure how to go about some of that in some cases, but anyway, yeah, I'll see all of you next week. You guys have a good evening.